How do you do, ladies and gentlemen? I have a lot to tell you, but before I do, I want to tell you about my book called Schmucks. This book, by the way, is becoming an international sensation. You know, I don't want to sound self-serving, but it's amazing how popular this book became in such a short time, because we characterize everybody who we consider a schmuck. A schmuck, you know, is a Yiddishism for somebody who's not making sense, who's preposterous, ridiculous, obnoxious, disgusting, in any way that a person is making a fool out of himself, sometimes seriously, sometimes ridiculously. So we attack everybody. We abuse politicians, we tell the truth about the inside story of the hypocrisy of a lot of celebrities and a lot of revelations that you might not know about the character of all these people. So it's, by the way, it's also hilarious, it's packed with comedy. That's why this book is becoming such a huge hit. It's already on the New York Times bestseller list, and it's climbing every day. Now, this happens to be a fact because I always give you the facts, even when I'm talking about myself. But what's more important is the message I want to leave with you today. We're back to the gun control issue. I did a couple of blogs about gun control on previous Thursdays and Sundays, and this time I want to complete my stand on this issue by telling you something that I think maybe a lot of people never thought of. First of all, the whole feel-good idea of gun control is preposterous and idiotic, because the proof is that more people are getting killed in the streets all over America than ever before. The murder rate has actually gone up instead of down. It's all because of the fact that there is gun control laws in so many cities that are absolutely tough gun control laws. But everybody knows that a murderer is not going to be affected by gun control. He'll manage to get a gun one way or another, just like, as I said before, people get marijuana, even though there's 10-year sentences for it, or for any other kind of drug that people want to get. People will always get an illegal anything they please if they're crooks or thieves or murderers. The question is this: how do we stop the murder rate from climbing in this country? And what do we do to avoid another horrible story like just happened in this university? The only way we could do it is by allowing people to have guns. Now, we just can't allow indiscriminately people to run around with guns. But let's be honest about it. The people who are in favor of gun control never stop to think of the results. If you're in favor of a remedy, and the remedy is not working, and you see instead of not working, it's getting worse all the time, and the abuse of this problem is becoming more and more of a horror every day, do you stick with the same solution that you know is not working forever just because it feels good to say I'm against people having guns? It feels good to say it. Nobody cares if the result ever serves a purpose. Nobody cares. That's the sickness of people who like to feel like they're compassionate, they're concerned that a person who has a gun is violent, or he's an NRA member, which is even worse, he's a Republican, which is even worse than that, and somehow these are cold-hearted people. They want everybody to have guns and they can't be trusted. But you are for gun control, which makes you a very peaceful, kind-hearted, compassionate person. It makes you feel good to say it. But the truth of the matter is you are a complicitous in murder. You are basically a partner with everybody who's trying to kill people, because what you're doing has exactly the opposite effect, because the only people you're stopping from having guns are law-abiding people. And the only reason that these kids got killed just now in this college is because nobody in that university had a gun. Now, what would be the problem? Why would it be so impossible to suggest? And if you have an open mind on the subject and forget about the cliches that you're living with in the past, because this requires new solutions. Every classroom should have at least one person who was trained to carry a gun. Just like you train a soldier or a cop to have a gun, there's no reason why you can't train a college kid to have a gun. Why can't a college kid who's 20 years old enough to be in an army or to be a cop? What if he wanted to volunteer to be the one in the classroom that's trained to carry a gun with the same kind of training as if he was becoming a cop? There's nothing wrong with this idea. And if you have an open mind, you would realize that there's no problem with this idea. It's positively workable. Because if there was a kid in each class who had a gun, nobody would have gotten killed. Or maybe, God forbid, somebody would have gotten killed, but there certainly wouldn't have been a massacre like that. And we would have saved at least 80 or 90% of the lives, or maybe all of the lives. Now, there's no excuse in the world for this not being workable. Because it's such a new idea, people say, oh, that's ridiculous. A person in every class will have a gun. What are you going to have, an army in the classroom? Why not? What if there was a police department that put a cop in every classroom? You would say that's a brilliant idea, but who could afford it? Then you don't have to afford it, because you could have volunteers. You know who the volunteers are? The same person who would be a cop. He's called a student. And just because he's called a student doesn't mean he can't do the same thing that a cop does. He's not brainless because he's a student. And what if this student decided to become a cop? You would say, perfect. He could protect the classroom. Pretend he has a uniform and he's called a cop. It's the same person. And he could protect your classroom. And every classroom in America will suddenly become a safe place. And if everybody had an open mind, they would realize that this is a brilliant idea and it's totally workable. But nobody cares if it's workable. They only care if it sounds good. If it sounds good to be compassionate by saying you're for gun control, makes you a nice person. It doesn't make you a nice person. It makes you a moron who doesn't care if people get killed. Because if you cared, and you really cared, you would look at the figures, and you would find out that gun control costs lives and kills people. And every time people are volunteers in any town in America, if you study the statistics, where they allowed people to have guns, after they were trained and licensed to carry a gun, all of a sudden crime went down to practically nothing. Now this is absolutely a fact. Nobody cares about the facts. They care about they sound good. I'm for gun control. You're a moron if you're for gun control. And you don't care if people die. Because you prove you don't care because they're dying and you don't know the difference and you don't care about the difference and you don't want to do anything to change it. Nobody would keep the system going that's not working. And people are dying. It's about time we put a stop to it. And we put a stop to people who are in favor of gun control. If that's what you're in favor of, get out of the country or keep your mouth shut.